Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Sandwich of Coherency. So today we have a spicy one for you. If you saw the preamps, then you know that today I am going to do a little bit of a treat. Montgomery, Maryland decided that they wanted students to take a white privilege anti-racist test so that the children, i.e. the white children, can gauge the privilege that they have so that the browbeating to make them feel less of themselves for not having any control of the situations they were born in an attempt to make them feel even worse about that. And the flip side is that they get to use that to make the minority children feel worse about themselves. Imagine sitting in the classroom. See, you, because of your skin, you have all this and all that and all this and all that because of your skin color. No. It has nothing to do with what your parents or them before them have done to put you into a better situation as they're looking at it, because it's just based on your skin color, and then turning around in the same classroom and looking at the children of color and saying all the negative things in your life, everything that's bad that can happen to you, that has happened to you and will happen to you and has not even been imagined to happen to you, is all because of the white kids over here. It's their fault. And unless they decide to say that they are superior to you and must give you shit, then you'll never get ahead. And so we need to change lesson plans and everything else because, well, you're not very smart because there are white people in the class and we have to do this for your benefit. Okay, so, but then again, the flip side is what do you say to how does it work for the middle class and the upper class children of brown skin? And also, what about Asian people? You see, nobody ever talks about Asian people in this conversation, despite the fact that Asian Americans outperform everybody else, especially white people, by a high margin. This includes Indian people. They outperform everybody else, which is why I had brought it up before. You've got the schools out on the West Coast that decided to make Asian people constituted as white people on paper so they could say that there's a separation in the education gap. But I mean, I really want to I want to point this out. You know, you have American universities that are openly racist towards Asian people in their admissions process. Harvard, Stanford, Ivy League universities, and they have them capped down to around 13%, I want to say. And they say that the reason they do that is because if they didn't use racism against Asian people, they would make up about 49 to 51% of the university's population. And this coincides with what they wanted to do in California. We want to discriminate based on race so that we can make other people more prosperous, even if they didn't deserve to get there. And this is not to say that anybody who is applying doesn't deserve to be there if they should be there, but it's supposed to be merit-based. Getting to university should be based off of your ability to be there. And to decide to say that, well, all these people that fall into what we call this ethnic category, we're going to be racist towards them and lessen the admissions for them because they're trying harder than everybody else. They're working harder than everybody else. They apparently seem to be putting in more effort, so they're outperforming everybody else. And if we're not using racist tactics for them, well, then they're just going to take up all the space. I mean, what kind of difference is there? We don't want all these black people in the school. So we're going to limit black people coming here. We don't want that many. Oh, we don't want that many Asian people in the school because it's creating, a big problem. It's creating a problem because it goes against the narrative because they count as a minority in the United States. Okay. All right. But they're going to be discriminatory towards them. So, I mean, I just think it's very interesting that this whole idea of privilege, they use the argument based on which races fit their argument, because you're never hearing Democrats being out and about, well, Asian people are being no. Yeah, they try and say, oh, there's so much hate against Asians, but they won't tell you the reality of what that hate is and where that hate, what's happening here. I don't want to say what's causing it or generating. There's lots of factors that have been brewing for years, but as you saw in 2020, you saw, and especially early parts of 2021, before they passed that quote unquote anti-Asian hate bill, you had a few Asians getting assaulted here in the United States. And it's I think it's hilarious how the media just carefully sidestepped that a majority of those people that were doing these violent acts towards them were other minorities. But see, they said it was because of white supremacy. And see, this is how they tried to flip it on CNN and ABC and MSNBC. Black people are out here assaulting Asian people because of white supremacy. January 6th, blah, 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 blah. Anything they could say to just kind of dance around the fact that they are absolute liars and they have no consistency. This brings me to the interesting part, what we started with, Montgomery County, Maryland, which is having the anti-racism test, which is created based off standards set by a lady by the name of Peggy McIntosh. And if you were to Google her, you would look at her and say, oh, she looks like such a nice old lady. But looking into her works, I disagree with a lot of it. She is, but I'm not going to talk negatively of her. She's a senior citizen and, well into her 80s, and I'm not going to bash on. I'm not going to bash on the person. But what I want to get into is the fact that she is one of the primary people, one of the main voices for this whole idea of privilege, of seeing people as having privilege, and this raises a bigger question. I mean, let's look at the reality here. This whole idea of privilege. The whole point as a parent is to make it so your children are privileged. Now, this is not to say that your children you should just provide them and give them everything they've ever wanted, but your job as a parent is to work hard so that your children don't have to go through the same type of hardships that you went through to be successful. The whole point is you want them to start from a better place than you did. Okay? And this whole, and parents, they work hard. They work hard so that, hey, my child, I want them to spend their time focused on getting an education, making themselves as smart as they can possibly be, so they have more time to be able to I want them to be able to focus on their studies so they can find a way to be prosperous in life. I, as a parent, am not going to always be here, but I want them to have something to start from. I want them to be prosperous. If that means that I have to work hard, and my child might not end up actually having what you would call a quote unquote real job until, say, maybe he gets to be 18, 19. That doesn't mean that he is not had responsibility put on him. That comes down to the parents to instill those things in the child. And those are life lessons, but the idea of allowing of your child not having to work so hard as you, That's the whole point. I'll give you a prime example. Whether you believe the nonsense he had to say or anything like that, you got, people like Jay-Z, people like Snoop Dogg, people that grew up in the hood. Their children are very privileged. Very, very privileged. Now, we know that people like that they had hardships coming up. They went through a lot, but look where they're at now, and they worked to get there. They went through that. If you believe Jay-Z's selling crack in the street back in the day, then you know that he did not have the easiest of lives, more than likely. Which means that, does he want that for his children? Does he want his children to have to go through the same things that he went through? No. And you would be a terrible parent if you did want that. Okay, if you grew up in poverty, not knowing where your next meal was coming from, not knowing whether or not the lights were going to be on, whether or not you were going to have heat in the winter, whether or not you're going to be able to wash your clothes or even be able to take a bath. If you grew up in that, and you can honestly look in the mirror and say to yourself, I want my children to go through that, then I have to say that you should not be allowed to have children. You should not be allowed to raise other people because you are not prepared. All you people who have that mindset are bitter and are essentially setting their own children up for failure because they didn't succeed. And that's an absolute reality. And I say this to all of you listening. If you hear somebody saying some things like that about their children, you might want to keep a careful eye on that. I'd call it maybe looking at Child Protective Services, because that is not going to be conducive to a successful life for that child. Now, one of the counties in Atlanta years ago had a superintendent, a new school superintendent come in. He was Haitian, and what he was planning to do was to make Chinese, which, even though I disagree with that choice of language being chosen for different reasons, I would have gone with something else. But the reason he did it was he wanted the students that were coming out of these counties to be prepared for the next realm of business that's coming forth. He wanted them to be prepared to be going to the business world and be able to communicate with those which would be the dominating business partners. And he's looking at the growth of the Chinese economic structure and their expansion, and understands that by the time these children are adults, a lot of the business structure is going to be revolving around that. And we know this as of right now, because if you look at what's happening with the tech world, you realize that China is beginning to dominate in a way that the U.S. should have never let happen. As far as processors goes, China is about to dominate the world and will soon be more or less the sole producer based on the volume that they're producing. So what he wanted to do was he wanted them at an early age to learn Chinese, so that as they got older, if they wanted to continue with it, they could. And if they decided to go into business, the American children would be able to compete. Now, I'm listening to this on NPR, and, they interviewed a parent and to get what their opinion of what they thought. And this is the parent's response. This is her response verbatim. Why does my child need to learn Chinese when he's going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's? This is the response of the parent to someone saying, we want to teach your child something new to prepare them for the future so that they can be successful. Oh, you just have to laugh at the spectacle of that. So what I'm going to touch on is this, and I'm going to do a few questions from the test, from this white privilege test which was given. And I'm going to see how as a brown-skinned man, and maybe too feminist, let's see just how much white privilege I have. All right. Now, according to the test, if you get 13 or if you can say yes to 13 or more of these questions, well, then you have white privilege. Okay? What they say exactly is, if you're able to answer yes to 13 out of 25 questions, have you considered that white privilege may play a role in your life? All right, let's see how much white privilege I got. All right, first question. Let's see. People never assume I am an immigrant before I even say a word. Yes. People don't assume that I'm an immigrant before I even say a word. No, they don't. People never assume that. No, that is unless I've been getting on an airplane. I will say that when I had this giant freaking beard, for some reason I got randomly selected to be checked by the TSA on a frequent basis. But it's funny because I didn't get a lot of people assuming I'm an immigrant from actual white people. I actually got that from a lot of Indian people, as well as people from Saudi Arabia. So that was a very interesting thing, but I never, I've never had a white person look at me and say, hey, where are you from? No, I actually get that from other foreigners. Which actually goes to the next question. Where are you from? It's easy to answer, even if the person asking is trying to figure out why I look the way I do. So, where are you from? Do people ask me? Nobody asks me where I'm from. What? I mean, people ask each other where they're from all the time. This is the United States. There's 50 freaking states. A lot of times when people say, hey, where are you from? They don't mean what country. A lot of times they mean, hey, what county? Let's say you're up in New York. You from the Bronx? You from Harlem? Where are you from? You're in Charlotte. Are you from Matthews, Mint Hill, from the Concord area? I don't know. I mean, you're in Los Angeles. You're from East LA, South LA. Where are you at in Orange County? Where are you from? Gardena, Harbor City, Marina Del Rey, Redondo Beach. I mean, I'm just saying, like, to assume that a person asking where a person is from automatically means what country they're from. That's racist. So the first two questions are racist. Let's see. I can go into any shop and easily find food, music, or clothes that represent my race or fit with my cultural traditions. Yeah. Actually, yeah. Think about this. Ask yourself a question. In the United States. When was the last time you saw a traditional German clothing store, a traditional Italian clothing store, a traditional anything really European cultural store? Think about that. Can you find a lot of like African type stores? Yes. Can you find a lot of Asian specific stores? Korean, Laos, Cambodian, Chinese? Yes. Can you find a lot of Latino, Honduran, Ecuadorian, and other stores? Yes, you can. You can find those all over the place. If you were to look at a young kid from Mexico and you were to ask him, can you go into any shop and easily find food, music, or clothes that represent your race or fit with your cultural traditions? Yes, that is the answer. Because guess what? They eat the same kind of foods. They wear the same kind of clothes as everybody else. So the first 3 questions off gate are racist. Yes, I can answer yes to all of them. So 4, I can go into a museum or art gallery and will see people of my race widely represented in the objects and artwork. Yes. It depends on the type of museum or art gallery that you're going to. You know we have black bookstores? Do you know we have art galleries that are run by people of color? Did you know that at pretty much all museums, they have exhibits from Africa? I mean, this is not something new. You know, art is everywhere. You have to go to different places to see it. Not every museum carries the same stuff. Okay? If you go into 10 different museums and 10 different museums at the same time have the same Van Gogh painting, one of them is lying to you. Or rather, let me take that back. 9 of them are lying to you. So 4 questions, yes. Number 5, I can walk into any hairdresser and be sure that they can cut my hair. This is absolutely obvious. Okay? You don't see a lot of young black men walking into a Supercuts. When was the last time you saw a young black girl walking into a Veda asking for some box braids? Okay? I mean, this is not rocket science. We have black barbershops. They're very popular. They're so popular, they made a freaking movie and it had a sequel. I mean, seriously. Have the people who administered this ever talked to one of their students? You ever asked them, hey, Billy, Bobby, Jerome, whatever his name is, do you know where a barbershop is where you can get your hair cut? Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, who the hell you think is doing the shape up? Okay. In any store, it is easy to find makeup and or band-aids that match my skin tone. Yes, it is. It's called makeup. It's called a color palette. They come in multiple shades. It's just a matter of what you're looking for. And it's funny that the Band-Aid thing came up because I think that's just stupid in itself. All right. Things for healing wounds. It doesn't matter if it's my skin color or not. The only thing I'm worried about is, does it stop the bleeding? That's all that matters. Does it stop the bleeding? You ever looked at gauze pad? The gauze is white. Oh my gosh, it's ivory white. What person did they make that for? You ever looked at the color of a Band-Aid? It's not even flesh toned of white people. It's more like, kind of like, it has more like a Puerto Rican, Dominican, you know what I mean? It's not so much what you would call classic European. And if a white person puts a Band-Aid on, you know he's wearing a Band-Aid. Maybe if he has a tan. But I mean, honestly, skin tone Band-Aids themselves are like the skin color of light-skinned black people. I mean, this is nonsense. So the answer to these is yes to the first 6. And again, all 6 so far, every question on this has been absolutely racist. 7, I can go shopping alone and be sure that I won't be followed or harassed. Yes, this is absolutely true. Unless I'm going into a store in the freaking hood. If I'm going to a store in a area that's known for crime and whatnot, they typically do check. They do watch, especially when you got 4 or 5 young kids coming in with backpacks hanging out in the corner near the candy section. You ever wonder why they have so many freaking cameras in there? That's what those cameras are for. So by what this question is asking is, it's stating that the store owner keeping an eye on theft prevention and those coming into their stores are racist. By putting up cameras and putting up the mirrors to be able to make sure people aren't stealing out of your store, that is racist and then white privilege, what they're saying. So every black shop owner, every black restaurant owner, every black owner who owns a business who has cameras in a said establishment for theft prevention, you are a white supremacist, according to Peggy McIntosh, the white anti-racist, which is apparently trying to explain to you how to be black. Now, are there those people out there that are overzealous about it? Yes, there are. Okay, but one person out of however many thousands of people that are like that is not indicative of an entire group of people. And this is the problem that people keep forgetting, that they want to pick and choose which group, where if one person does something, then that represents the entire group. And again, that's racist. So we're 7 questions in. Every bit of this test has been racist so far. I've been able to answer yes to all of them. So far, I'm kind of hitting 100% on my white privilege. Let's see. If a police officer stops me, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race. Well, that depends on where you're at, and that's individual. That's individual to the police officer himself, actually. Now, I have had interactions with police before. And I can honestly say I've had one situation where I felt some type of way about it, but the reality is that, you know what? I complied and went along with it, and he sent me on my way. No problems. Granted, that sack of shit took my wallet. I was taking it with me to all the raves I was going to, and I had everyone from Sasha, John Digweed, Roger Sanchez. I had all these autographs on it, and I guess maybe he knew whom they were because the a-hole took my wallet. So I don't, but now here's the funny part. It was me and 2 white guys in the car. I was not driving. So I highly doubt that the police officer put over the white dude that was speeding because the black guy was in the car. So let's kill that. Now, like I said, depending on where you are, you're going to run into those situations, but it's individual to the person. And that's very important. You have to remember, and I keep saying this, there's good people out there and there's bad people out there. And there are good people who become cops and there are bad people that become cops. And we need better evaluations to be able to weed the bad people out, those that are in it for the power trip. So let's see. Let's go to question number 9. Whenever there is a terrorist attack, I know that people will not look at me in a more fearful, hateful, and or accusing way. And the answer is yes. That's it. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. Look, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about the obvious. They don't want to say certain things because, what if people get upset? No, let's talk about the obvious. I mean, even Dave Chappelle made jokes about this shit before. The reality is, when shit blows up, nobody's looking at black people. Okay? Let's keep it real. When a building blows up, nobody's looking at black people. Now, when motherfuckers are running out with tens of 20 boxes of Jordans and shit, that's when they're looking at black people. That's just pointing out the fucking obvious. I mean, shit. I mean, if you hear about a petrol station getting busted up in and somebody ran in and took all the fucking cigarillos, come on, man. It's either going to be, I don't know, maybe Latino or black. I mean, if it's white people, you would probably think they took all the papers. The JOBs, you know what I mean? But then again, those raw cones, people smoke a lot of those. So, yeah, so these first 9 questions, all yeses. And we're more than halfway to fulfilling our white privilege goal of 13 questions. So, let's see. The books I read in school often have characters who share the same skin color as me. This is true. We have libraries, and those libraries have books, and those books have lots of words by many different authors, and they come in many different colors. And I can tell you, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have read multiple books in the libraries, read multiple stories in their reading books at school with no inkling as to the race of the person that wrote the story. And that's what we need to go back to. Let's stop making it about, well, this book was written by a black guy, so we're going to read it. This book was written by a white guy, so we're not going to read it as much. I mean, let's keep it real. They're trying to keep this reality. We were trying to teach children the truth. Well, everybody forgets there were many school districts around the United States that removed the book To Kill a Mockingbird. Why? Because it was harmful. It was hurtful to black people. Why? Because it said the N-word. Did you read the book? Did you read the freaking book? To Kill a Mockingbird is a very important piece. That is a very important book that I think every child should be reading. You know, let's face the hardships so that we can get past them. Quit creating weak men. All right? There's a saying, and it's really interesting. You know, hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So let's move on to question number 11. In the movies I watch, many of the main characters share the same skin color as me. Yes, they do. I watch many movies from all over the world. I'm just not keeping myself locked into what's coming out of Hollywood blockbusters. There are many things that have black voice actors, black actors, you know. And the reality is, and here's the funny part, okay? The reality is, if you want more black movies, if you want more black books, if you want more black authors in general, then black parents need to encourage their children to do those things. It is not the job of the state to raise your child. Their job is to teach them the basics: arithmetic, reading, science, and to essentially babysit them. Your job is to raise them. Your job is to encourage them. Just like they had this nonsense before. There's not a lot of black women or black people in marine biology. Well, that's a lie. And you're just talking about really somewhere here in the United States. It's a big fucking planet. And the planet's bigger than the United States. You don't think there's any marine biologists in the entire continent of Africa that are African? I mean, come on. Look, there's this mindset that there's only African Americans and the European descent people in the United States. This argument has got to stop. You gotta spread that unevenness, stupidity around. There's lots of other places to be stupid to. Okay, so we got yes to the first 11 questions. We're getting into the crunch time. In the history I have studied, my ancestors are given a lot of attention and credit. Yes, they have. Because I look at history. I was raised reading history books and whatnot, but my family also expanded on that. They gave me other history books. Why? Because they were raising me and teaching me. They didn't leave it up to the state. Okay, they ensured that I learned other stuff. So I can look at history and I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh man, they're teaching me about Europe where there's no Africans and there were Africans. but you're trying to, in American history, you're trying to cram the entire history of the world, and the parts that they're talking about don't get into they kind of throw that all in together when we get into the civil rights movement and whatnot. It's kind of a larger thing, and they expand onto that in most schools for Black History Month, though for some reason, they only talk about the same Black people every year. But hey, the schools are saying, I think that they're absolutely more responsible for that. And again, it's also on the parents. If you are a Black parent, it is your job to teach your child Black culture. This is what Asian families do. This is what Latino families do. This is what Spanish families, Russian, German, French, everybody else does. If you want people to learn about the history that they have in the United States, or you want them to learn about the many different countries in Africa, because Africa is a continent, okay? Then you have to teach that to them. You have to teach that to them. All right. Number 13, moment of truth. I can be sure that when taught about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is. Yes. Yes. Absolutely yes. This whole narrow-minded mindset that they have to try and keep everything on this one little spot, they miss the rest of the expansion. And even more so, they could get it right. They could get it even better. James Lewin, Loewen, wrote a great book called Lies My Teacher Told Me. Penn State started using it, I believe, for their Intro to U.S. History 101, because as they pointed out, every student coming in there had to be retaught history, because the first years of everything they were taught before they got to university was pretty much everything was wrong. Abraham Lincoln was not born in that cabin. They don't know where he was born. George Washington did not chop down that apple tree and say, I cannot tell a lie. That never happened. It never happened. But this is the heroification they give. And the idea of doing that, according to the Department of Education, is to heroify certain leaders to create a sense of patriotism in the belief in the country, in the ideas that the country holds. I have no problems with that, but I think they should be a little bit more honest with how they're doing that heroification. And maybe expand on the people that were considered heroes. The founding fathers are great, but there's many more people that deserve to be a part of that. There are a lot of people who signed that Declaration of Independence. So check this out, right? That's just the first 13 questions. And every single one of those questions has been absolutely, absolutely racist, But this is what they made those children take. And I think that Montgomery County up in Maryland should be ashamed of themselves. They should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. You don't do children like this. So, but yeah. So according to their anti-racist test, I have white privilege. So apparently I need to check my privilege, I guess. And I don't know. Am I supposed to give my stuff to other Black people? This is the kind of lot. This is what I'm talking about. It just all makes no sense. But I thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this interesting section of hilarity, and we will catch you next time.